Hi everyone, my name is Lori, my nickname is Rini, and I'd like to welcome you to Rini Bobini Creations. If it's the first time you've stopped by to check out my channel, I'd like to offer you a very warm welcome. And to my subscribers, I'm so glad you're back. I miss you guys. I have been off for a couple of weeks, actually almost a month I think, between Christmas and holidays, and it's our year end at work. It's been a little hectic. But I've got a really cool one for you today. I must admit the editing might be a bit choppy because it was a kind of a wing it. I knew what I wanted it to look like, but it took some finagling, but I'm super happy with the end product, and I hope you guys like it too. So let me stop yakking and let's get on with the crafting. Okay, so I'm gonna do something a bit different today, and we may just incorporate it into my videos because it's just too cute and it just cracks me up. So I have to tell you about my dad. He is 80 and he lost my mom a few years back, and his new wife has just recently been put into a home, so he's alone again. He still sees her every day, and my dad is like with it. That we don't, no dementia. He's still very healthy, very active. He drives. He's always busy. I hope I have his energy and his wits at his age. But anyway, there's something about, I don't know if it's my dad or the generation or what it is, but whenever I go to see him, and I go every Thursday night, sometimes additionally, but always on Thursday nights, I go spend some time with him. And I cannot leave his house without him giving me something. And it's not like, if you go home and visit mom and she sends you home with your favorite cookies. It's the most random, just weird stuff you've ever seen. And it's become quite a joke. So when I get home on a Thursday night after being with my dad, my husband always meets me at the door and says, "So, what'd you get?" And so, it is the most random stuff. So I'm gonna share this one with you because I actually kind of like the one thing. So the last time I was there, this is what he saved for me. And he knows I'm a crafter, but I don't think that pairs into it. I'm not sure why and you'll see when I get other things. Like one time he gave me two potatoes. What am I, it's so sweet, but it's so funny. But anyway, I decided to share this one because I really like this napkin. I'm really not sure what I'm going to do with it, but it's funny that he gave me one napkin and some cellophane. So I'm going to think of something to do with this napkin, and I'll have to show him when it's done. But I might just have to incorporate so you can see the funny things I end up getting from my sweet, sweet dad. It's so funny. Anyways, that's enough yammering from me. So today we are doing a craft with one of these, and I've picked them up because I've seen all kinds of crafts done with them, and I think they're just beautiful and I absolutely love them. But I finally came up with a new idea, and this is actually going to be a gift for someone. But what we're going to do, you're going to need two of the canvases, and we're going to use several different techniques in making this craft. And it is so customizable. Like, you could change, if you didn't have this or couldn't get this, I think most Dollar Trees have it, but if they don't, you could use, scrapbook paper. One of the techniques we're going to get into here pretty quick, we're going to do some stenciling, but we're going to use it like a paste to give it some texture. If you don't have the paste, I'm just using it because I happen to have it. Otherwise, I would use the spackle that you can get from the Dollar Tree. So super, and colors, I mean, there's just so many ways you can customize this to suit anyone and anything in your life. So to start, what I want to do is I'm going to kind of do like this, but not all the way. Like, I want it to be kind of off kilter. So I'm just going to do a rough line. Now, again, this line is not, we're not looking for perfection here because we're going to do some other things to it. But just a line so I know how far I want my next part to go, my paint part. So okay, yeah, that's gonna work out pretty nice. So we know that the patterned stuff, the tile, is gonna go on this half. So on the bottom half, we're going to use a little technique that I learned in one of in the Sylvan Lake Art Society, which I'm a member of, and it's really cool, and I've seen it done before, and I've played with it a bit. So the stuff that I have is called light molding paste. It's a product by Golden. The rep came out, it's a beautiful product. But again, if I didn't already have this, I would just use spackling for it. So what you're gonna wanna do is find a stencil that you like. And for me, I just want sort of a pattern. I'm not looking to make a sign or anything, you know, like, you'll see what I mean. Now, if you can't do either one of those things, if you don't have a paste or you don't have the spackling, you're still looking for some texture, the other thing that you can do, and I do it all the time and I love the look of it, is you can use some Mod Podge and some tissue paper, and you're going to crumple up your tissue paper so it's kind of crinkly, then sort of smooth it out and put it on and let some of those wrinkles stay, and you will see when we get to that step that it will give you a very similar effect. But because I have this and I've got a stencil I've been planning to use for this, that's what we're going to do. So I'm just going to grab the new stuff and all the products we'll need to make this happen, and I will be back to you. Okay, so you can see that I've got this stencil, and I'm just going to place it on my piece about as level as I can get it there, and then I'm just going to use some masking tape to hold it in place. Which is going to prove interesting because I don't know where I'm going to tape it down. Here we go. I'm just going to try and stick it where I can, where it'll stay. Yeah, we're still pretty even there. A little there, I can kind of maybe get it to stay. And I think I'll do one here, and then I'll just move it when I get to that section, I think, because I'll be able to hold it from there. Now, the thing with using a canvas rather than a board is there is some give to it. So you do have to be a little bit careful, but this is one of those projects where if it's not completely perfect, it's still going to be beautiful. It won't have to be, you know, you're not looking for absolute perfection on this particular project, because it's kind of going to have like a, I don't want to say sort of aged rough look. Like, I don't want it to look pristine. So we're going to do our best here to not make a mess, but if we make a bit of one, it'll be okay. Then for me, I'm just going to take my little thing here and turn it upside down, and I'm going to put the paste on that. I'll just use whatever you have at home. Spatula, probably a putty knife would be best. I'm not going to go find mine. I'm too lazy right now. I just want to get on with it. So I'm just going to put some on and scrape it off. And I'm going to do that to the whole piece here. And again, if you have the spackling, it will work just as well. This is a little bit smoother to put on. It's not as thick and chunky, I guess, if you know what I mean by that. But it will definitely do the trick. And like I said, if I didn't already have this in my stash, that's what I would be using. Okay, and so then I'm going to take it off and let it dry before I move it up and do this next little section. Now, if I recall correctly, it didn't take very long for it to dry. So depending what you're using, but you do want to wait for it to dry unless your stencil's big enough to go the whole way, which of course mine is not. But you can, I'm going to try and turn it so you can see, I'm hoping you can see in the camera how that's looking. Can we see that? Sort of. You'll see it for sure when it's done. So it is raised. It doesn't bleed underneath like paint will. Like if you're doing, you know, stenciling with paints, it doesn't bleed underneath, and it's going to come out just beautiful when it's done. So I'm just going to set that side to dry, and when I've got the whole thing done, we'll come back and move on to the next part. So now we're going to go ahead and cut our tile on the diagonal, and you don't have to worry about a perfect cut. It is going to be hidden, that raw edge, when we're done, as close as you can get it. And then once that's done, we are going to go ahead and give it a couple of coats of black chalk paint. You can use acrylic paint, you will probably need more coats, but we're going to completely cover it in the black paint before we go on to the next bit. I've used my Cricut to cut out I think they're Chinese, that's what I typed in, and so that's what came up. But for eternal love, like I said, this is for a specific person, and this is going to suit their house and their life very well. But when you cut them out, I don't know if it's on the Cricut, unless you get the paper that's colored all the way through, you end up with this white edge, and I don't want that. So I'm going to give these a coat of the chalk paint as well, just to get rid of those white edges on there. So I've got these two words, and then I do have the symbols, I guess the Chinese writing for it. I don't know if you can see that there. And so I'll do the same thing. I'll take these out. Now, if that's not your thing, you could just do bigger words with love eternal. You could put anything you want. You could put people's names on there, whatever suits you and what you're going with. But I know this is going to suit them very well. So then I've got this little mold. Now, if you are good with clay, by all means use clay. If you're like me and not so good with the clay, and it just might be the quality of clay, so I might get some nicer stuff on Amazon and see how I do with that. But I'm going to use my glue gun, and I do it for a couple of reasons. One, like, it's just easier for me for molding and that sort of thing. The other reason is when you use hot glue, you can let it dry flat and it's still bendy. Whereas if you use modeling clay, you kind of have to work with it while it's wet, and it can, I'm not as delicate as some of the beautiful YouTubers I've seen, and I smush it sometimes. So I do like the hot glue. Aside from that, if you don't have any molds or anything like that, you can use, if you at the Dollar Tree, they have the little wood cutouts, and there's all kinds of shapes, and you can certainly incorporate those and use those as well. But this is what I'm going with because this was I have it. It's just hopefully going to inspire you in your crafting journey. And so I'm going to fill them all up with the hot glue. Yes, it takes quite a bit, but it seems to work very well for me. So I've been pretty happy with this technique, and I've used it to make Christmas decorations. I've got some Christmas crafts. I'll be using more of this on. I've done candle holders using this technique. And I really like it. I really like it when you have contours that you have to go around, because I just don't tend to be very good with my clay. I break it or I smush it. So yeah, I may try, like I said, getting some better quality clay and see if that's my issue, that I'm using, you know, the dollar store stuff, and some of their stuff is amazing and some is just not quite on par with other things, as I'm sure we've all discovered. So I'm going to set that aside to dry, and I'm going to make enough of them, of whatever, to go along that edge, the wonky edge we're kind of going to do on our piece later. And so just whatever pattern you go with, just make sure you have enough to follow that contour. And as I was kind of having a look and seeing how things were going to go together, I had originally used this one. It's too wide for what I'm looking for, so I just went to a slightly smaller one. Again, this is total personal preference, and it's not like I'm not going to find a use for the other ones that I made. And so I just went with one that's a bit narrower to go along our line. Okay, so this is all dry now, and so now I'm going to give it a coat of this chalk paint. It's called, what is it called? Nautical. From Folk Art. You can use whatever color and whatever type of paint you work. Acrylic would be just fine on this. I'm actually looked at my acrylics first and didn't find quite the right color I was looking for, and so this is the one I'm going with. And I'm going to give it a coat of paint. I'm going to go just past our line, but you don't have to paint the whole thing. So essentially we're painting the raised bit and just past the line. Okay, so everything's painted and dried now, and I've got this silver, metallic silver paint. I just picked it up at the dollar store. I actually really like this brand of the silver. I'm just going to put some aside because we are going to do a dry brush technique. And to do that, you need your paint, but you want to take most of the water. Like, you want to fairly dry brush. That's the name, dry brush, obviously. And then you're going to put your brush in the paint, and then we're going to take most of it off. Oops, that was not what I had in mind. Okay, so then we're just lightly going to brush over the surface. And it's really going to bring out not only the raised areas, but also the canvas, the linen look, I guess, of the canvas. And this is why I kind of said that any imperfections actually add to it, because they kind of bring them out, and I kind of like that look. So and if you want more silver, just do more layers. Like, don't go thicker on your brush, just go more layers if you want to have it stand out a bit more. So on this piece, we're going to do something very similar, but instead of using the silver, we're going to use a blue metallic. But I did want to let you know, it did take me probably 3 coats of the black chalk paint, which is kind of unusual. But it didn't want to stick real well to the shiny surface. It was definitely better than the acrylic. So just to make sure when we're doing the dry brush on here, I did put a coat of just matte Mod Podge over top, just to keep it where it needs to be, and so we're not rubbing off our black paint while we're putting on our blue paint. So I just wanted to make sure that I mentioned that. So I've got this blue metallic from Folk Arts, and we're going to do the same thing as we did with the silver. So we're just going to take off the water as dry as we can, and then we'll take some of our blue and brush that off too, and then we'll just start highlighting all the areas. Okay, so I got all the metallics on, and I usually, if I use silver, I don't use gold and vice versa, but I really felt like this was a little, I want it to be bit more warm and rich. So I just kind of started to see if I was going to like it, and I decided I do. So I've got this, it's a rub. Now you can use distressing inks, all kinds of things for this. This is just a rub on. You can use the gold paint and do the same sort of dry brush technique. I would go with a slightly lighter hand. But for me in this rub, I don't use a brush. I find it goes on heavier than I like. So I'm just using my finger, and I'm just kind of doing the same thing, just lightly going over everything. And I found that the gold is just making it a bit richer, a bit warmer, kind of more the feel I was going for. So I am going to just add this to both sides. I'm going to be fairly sparing with it. I'm okay if there's some slightly darker areas and lighter areas, but I feel like the gold is just making a real big difference in getting me that look I was really going for here. Alright guys, so it's time to start putting it together here, sort of. So first thing I'm going to do, and I know that this stuff only has sticky on the edges, so chances are it's not. Oh, this one doesn't. The last one I got only had sticky on the edges. Alright, so this is kind of a figure it out as I go project. So I'm going to start, just so I get it even, I figured that if I made this line even with that and went straight down to the corner, that was actually going to work for both of them. I know I said I didn't really want them to be identical, but actually when I started looking at it, I did. It's not quite right. I changed my mind on that, so we don't want the edge to be seen. Just, and I am going to use some hot glue in this as well, because I just really want to make sure that this isn't going anywhere. Now it's going to be on a wall, so it's not like a piece you're going to actually touch and use and whatever, but I still just feel like I do. And you know what I'm noticing? When you cut it, the backing isn't attached all the way. I think we're going to see if I can just take that right off, actually, because it's not working for me. Okay. All right. And we'll worry about these edges after. So yeah, I am going to take my trusty new Christmas present glue gun with the double temperatures. And I'm just going to start putting, I think I'll start in this corner. Nope, we're gonna start. I don't even know where to start. I'm like, I just want time to make it work. I could use, you know, Aleene's or something, but I'm afraid that if I did that and things weren't quite even, or I won't have time to finish the video, which is what I thought of doing. Okay, I think that's gonna get us to where we need to be. And I can still, it is hot glue, so if I have to actually pull it up, I will. Yeah, I think we're pretty good there. And I'm going to glue it first and then take my box cutter, X-Acto, or whatever you want to call it. Now, I'm not too worried about getting a ton of glue in here, but I am going to want it along the edge for our next step. And I'll show you why here in a few minutes. So let's just... Oh, I love my new glue gun. I also got a new drill. We'll have to bring out the drill in one of my projects soon. I have one in mind, actually, so. All right. So now that this is pretty down, I'm just gonna tuck a few. Now this next part I'm a bit worried about, and I'll show you why, because I'm hoping I can make it work exactly how I want it to, but because of the texture, we might have to do a little fiddling. But let's get this cut first so it looks all tidy and clean. Where did I put the box cutter I just had? There it is. Can't find things when they're actually put away. That's my craft room. And I'm not going to try and cover the sides. I wanted to at the beginning. I just couldn't make it look uniform, I guess. It just didn't look right. So I decided against that. So yeah, this is one of those figure it out as we go kind of projects. Okay, I'll have to touch that up a bit. So there we have our piece on. Pretty happy with it. So now the next step we're going to do is to make a line across this edge, and this is where these come in. Now if these are, you can see mine are a little raggedy on the edges, it actually doesn't matter at all, because when we're done it's still going to look freaking amazing, and sometimes the little extras actually aid. Now I don't want it to be too crazy, so you can just use your fingernail, or the other thing, if it's something I'm really looking for some precision on, I'll use nail clippers. Actually, I have nail clippers to do this with. And so we're going to put it along the seam. And I've kind of played with it a little bit off camera to see how I want it. And I think we're going to go one up, one down, all the way along. end to end. So if that makes sense, if you can see that one's sort of facing down, that one's up. And we're going to glue them on. Now I'm hoping, in spite of these ridges, that I can get them pressed down good enough. And I'm hoping, being that I used the glue gun, even if it means I have to melt it a little bit, we'll be able to do that, because I don't really want them sticking up. I want some texture, but that would just look unusual. Now we're going to go back in and paint them black. Now you're thinking, why didn't you just paint them before you put them on? Because now the black's going to go everywhere. And that's sort of what I want, actually. We're going to do, it's sort of like an ombre effect with these. And so bear with me. You're going to at first think it's not looking very good, but at the end it looks really amazing. And I absolutely love the technique. Let me grab my blotting thing. So I'm just using black chalk paint. I'm using a smaller brush for that, just so I can get in all the little nooks and crannies. And I am going to paint on the canvas and on the other side, and you'll see why when we're done. It looks really, really amazing. I know right now you're going, you're ruining it. It looks amazing, trust me. Alright guys, so it's all dry, and you can see that I went over all of this with the black, and I did that intentionally. And we're actually, now that it's all dry, we're going to do even a little bit more, because we want to sort of blend it out from there and not have it so harsh. So again, with my smaller brush, I'm just going to pick up some of the chalk paint. I'm going to brush a good bunch of it off. And then I'm just going to sort of drag it out so it's sort of feathered out and not such a harsh. Alright, so we've got it feathered out a little bit, so now we're going to add our accents. And again, like I think I said previously, I don't usually use silver and gold together, but this just sort of seemed to need it. So I'm actually going to start with the silver. Now, this is a rub that I got. You can use a paintbrush, and we will at one point here where I can't get into very well. But if you don't have this, the technique we just did to brush this out, you can do that just using silver acrylic. So you'll just do the dry brush, very similar to what I'm doing here, but you'll just use a dry brush. And you can see how doing this just brings out that detail and the texture of it. So now that we've got that done, I am going to go in with my little paintbrush again into the silver. And we're just kind of going to go into anywhere I couldn't really get. And we're going to start brushing it out much like we did with that black. So now we're going to go in over top of that with the gold rub here, and same as before, if you don't have it, go ahead and use your acrylic paint and do a dry brush. It'll give you pretty much the same effect. And I'm not going to cover the whole thing like I did with the silver. I'm just going to kind of add some of the gold highlights in there. right, now the last thing we are going to do before we put our wording on is I'm going to seal it. And I'm just going to use Mod Podge for this. So just, you can use Mod Podge, you can of course use a spray sealer, anything like that will work. So it turns out the edges are not very nice because the tile is textured. It's leaving some gaps and it's just not looking finished to me. So I do need to address how we're going to fix that little issue. But what I'm going to do, I have this doweling in my stock anyway, and it gave me a chance to use my new miter shears that I got for Christmas. I love them. Oh my word, these are the greatest things. How I lived without them this long, I don't know. They're just awesome. So I'm going to cut the frame using the doweling, and then I'm going to just take it and glue it right snug along the edge. And that's going to frame it out and hide the ugly edges. So in order to do that, if you've never done this, now angles were never my good spot. I would cut them backwards almost every time. I kid you not. But these miter shears are so cool. If you can get you some of these, they're amazing. So you can just spin it. So I need it on a 45, and then when you're doing the other side, and you just put your, and it will cut your angles, and that is like so amazing for those of us who aren't that great with angles. So I'm gonna try and do the first cut at least in the camera. So how I found the best way to make sure I get it where I need it is I place the inside, so the short side is where I measure from, and then just taking my pencil, I just do a rough line so I know which way I need to cut it. Oh, nope, that's right. I don't know if you can see, so just so I'm going the right way. I mean, it's not going to be a perfect thing either way, but just so I know. And that the other important thing is to make sure that you don't have one cut. How can I say this? You want to make sure that the angles are like kind of going the same way. I'll show you here. So to do that, I'm going to take my dowel and try not to knock everything over. Oh, this is the one that needs to go the other way, so I'm going to switch my miter shears to that 45. I'm going to find my line, and the bottom part of the line I'm going to line up on the line. Oh. So I'm trying to make this fit, and I don't want to cut my doweling down for the shot because I need the whole thing. And just like that, it cuts so easy, guys. It's amazing. Okay, so then what you want to make sure and do is have, you don't want it wonky. I'll show you on this one. What you don't want is you cut here and then you cut the same angle, but it's twisted, if that makes sense. So it's here and then they don't line up. So you want to make sure that they're both lined up. So again, I see my line. I want to, oh, it's the other way now. There's my line. Okay, so there's my line. So what I do want to make sure of is that they're both going, this is facing the same way. So you just want to make sure they're both facing there. So now you're going to have that nice cut where they're both facing, so that you get this and it's still the right way. All right, so I'm gonna go cut the top ends off camera here because I'm about to knock my camera over with my long dowel, and once we're all cut and good to go, I'll come back to you. All right, so I decided, as I said, we're kind of playing this one by ear. Maybe I should just put it together and make sure. And what I discovered is the canvases you get from the Dollar Tree are not entirely symmetrical. They look it, but they're not quite. So you can see they didn't fit in some places, even though when I was trying to measure them the first time, but I figure I'm probably not the only one that's ever going to run into this. And I thought about taking it off and redoing it and being a little more precise, I guess. And then I thought, I have these little things, and they're little corners, and they are going to go perfectly with all the with the silver wording and everything, and really pull the silver into it. So I am going to leave them, but I am going to put the frames on before I paint them, just to get them as close as I can. Like I said, I was going to take the whole thing apart, but I figure I am not the only one that's going to have this issue. And if you don't have the miter shears, you can cut them just straight and do like without the corners, which maybe is what I should have done in this case. But anyways, I didn't. So there are ways to sort of disguise and hide things and make them pretty anyway. So I just thought I would share that one with you. But yeah, I'm going to put the frames on and paint them while they're on, and then I will come back and we'll put the last of it together here. So the frame is all painted and attached now, and we're going to start putting it together. I have painted some of these little bits of dowel, and I have some of the little squares that you can get from the Dollar Tree and Dollarama to help raise that lettering. And yes, magically my black letters have become silver. The black just faded in too much, and I wasn't really happy with it. They didn't stand out the way I wanted them to. So I'm gonna just place these where I want them to go, and just check which ones work. The bigger squares didn't work on the tile part because of all the lifted, of all the texture there. So I'm just playing with it to get it where I want it, and then we will glue them down. And just the final little bit, we're gonna glue the word love, which is the translation, just on the bottom, and I left that in the black. I didn't switch that for the silver. I just kind of wanted it to be there but not stand out. And I am super happy with the way these turned out, so I will get some better pictures of them, show you the final product. But yeah, I'm really happy, and guys, thanks for hanging out with me till the end of the show. And yeah, like I said, love it. I'm so gonna use this idea again, and I hope you loved it too.